I'm a huge fan of Splatoon, and I've always wanted to make a challenge video for the franchise. Now that Splatoon 3 is out, I finally have my chance, and that is to beat the single player without the hero weapons. Subs and specials are fair game, but that's about it. So let's get started and squid jump into this. So this game has some new mechanics not seen in Splatoon 1 or 2, the main one being Small Fry. He can be used like a burst bomb that clings onto enemies and objects, but he's also used in the hub world. The fuzz kills Inkling right away, but with enough power eggs, Small Fry will actually eat entire chunks of this fuzz. To get power eggs, we need to play through levels in the crater, or they're basically the tutorial levels. Small Fry isn't able to open the kettles, so I'm gonna allow myself to open them with the hero shot just because I'm not actually in the level yet. Once we get in, I start hitting some boxes and balloons just so you can see how long it takes Small Fry to attack. This is gonna be one hell of an endurance. While it's amazing he can cling on to certain objects, you gotta wait like 3 seconds to destroy one balloon. Our first real obstacle though is splat switches. Since Small Fry can't produce ink of his own, we can't hit this switch. At least we can't with him. But first, we're skipping the switch because it's not necessary to clear the level, and I'm instead moving to the dead end. By using our special splashdown, we can easily hit the switch and keep going. There's one more switch we need to hit, but our special is no longer charged up. Thankfully, we can easily fill it up again by blowing up these ink balloons, and the damage on all the boxes causes it to fill up once again, which lets us finish this level. We collected 500 power eggs, which is plenty to get to the second level. And it starts off well, only to hit a wall. And I mean literally hit a wall. Since Small Fry can't produce any ink and my jump doesn't reach this puddle, there's no way to get up here. At least that's what I thought at first. If you're on the ground swimming, you can actually make ink trails if you move slow enough. And by doing that, you can actually fill your special meter. So what that means is I spent 30 minutes slowly inking on the ground to fill my special, get a splashdown, and complete level 2. So I moved on to level 3, and I immediately had a problem. There's a key at the bottom of this platform to open up a vault, but I have no way of getting back up top. I tried jumping off this fence and squidding through the gate, but I could not get myself up there. It was very close too, which was aggravating, but at least I can skip this level, right? So I moved on to the 4th level, which was honestly pretty simple. It was mostly just waiting for the enemies to explode from Small Fry's itty bitty hits, and after clearing the stage, a huge problem came up. The fuzzball that appears at the end to get to the boss wasn't there. It turns out I'm supposed to beat all 4 levels because some cutscenes have to play out to move the game forward. So that means I had to figure out some other strategies, and frankly, there weren't many options. I tried the gate jump some more to no avail, so my only idea was to save up a special and see if that would carry over to another level. And man, was that more obnoxious than I anticipated. After using my 2 specials on the switches, I had to go back and get one more. However, due to the boxes all being gone, it took way longer to fill up the special. Like, it was still working, but I had to shoot these balloon things hundreds of times. And when I finally did this and went back to level 3, the special didn't carry over. And yeah, you know, I kind of expected that, but I figured I might as well test it anyway. So since I couldn't find a workaround, I ended up taking one shot to get back up and continue forward. My luck was not about to get much better though, considering there was another splat switch I had to open up. Without a way to fill the special meter, I got the keys and used one more shot to finish the level. But whatever, I got to the boss, all was good. I just needed to use Small Fry on DJ Octavio's hands, but little buddy can't handle it. Small Fry does cling on to the hands, but it wasn't doing nearly enough damage output to reflect back at the DJ. You know, I don't know what I was expecting anyway. This tiny little dude couldn't have possibly been helpful against these massive hands. So what this entails is quite possibly the most time-consuming, obnoxious, and awful strats I've ever done for a challenge. So you can actually beat DJ Octavio with only 2 hero shots. Here's how. To start, there's no way to get your ink on the field without using your weapon, so by shooting once, I'm able to get a little dabble. This is enough to slowly swim and spread my ink around. You thought this took a long time in level 2? Now I gotta worry about DJ's fist coming in trying to squish me, meaning I have to stop doing what I'm doing and run away to ensure he doesn't destroy my puddle. Charging up just one special takes hours. This was pure, unadulterated masochism. After getting one splashdown, I was able to hit the fist one time, so only 3 more to go and then the first phase will be over. But thankfully, it's a little bit easier because the splashdown creates a lot more of my ink. When I eventually got to the end of the first phase, I'm able to use Small Fry against the DJ. However, I need to make another splashdown. Once I've done that, I let Small Fry do his thing, and when the second phase starts, all the ink is gone. This is why we made another splashdown. It allows me to put ink on the ground and also save some time since I'll have to swim for 3 hits instead of 4. However, since Small Fry is stuck on the ink vac, I have to use a splashdown on DJ on the second phase, meaning that for the final phase, I need to use one more shot since I wasn't able to use Small Fry on DJ. So you do this entire cycle one more time, and that is how you beat DJ with 2 hero shots. But let's move on to Site 1 and see what we can knock out. The first level was pretty straightforward because I had access to all 4 subs. It's not going to always be like this. In fact, there's levels where you can only pick one or have none at all, but here I grabbed the keys and reached the goal. For the second level, I picked the Heavy Splatling because it comes with burst bombs, and man, what a great choice this was. It took roughly 2 hits per enemy, but it was so much faster than using our little buddy, plus I could swim through ink again. Oh, thank God. The third level was more of the same thing, and so was the fourth, but it's more of a puzzle level. The fifth level, Relic Restoration, was really interesting because I found it to be way easier to ink the Eastern Island head with only burst bombs. It just gets better coverage than a normal weapon, and I didn't even need to use the walkway that sits on the outside. Following that is level 6, and I freaking adore this one. You just use the zip caster the whole time, flying around like a goddamn ninja. The 7th level only has Small Fry, so obviously this one is doable, but the 8th is not. Titled What Caused the Big Bang, you're supposed to snipe the boxes and you aren't given a sub at all. As for the 9th level, The String's the Thing, we're only given curling bombs. That's not ideal in the slightest since we need to hit these precise switch spots. The first wall is no problem since the blast radius reaches, but the second wall is a dead end. I tried standing on the edge and holding off the bomb so it barely moves forward, but even when it's kissing the wall, the blast didn't reach the last switch, deeming the level undoable. And for the 10th level, Deadly Dance Hall Jump Jump, you just jump without any equipment, so 8 successful levels is pretty solid so far. Let's see how Site 2 fares for us. Let me just say, things got hella spicy in Site 2. Our first level was fairly basic. The second one was a bit tougher. I decided to go with Small Fry over Splat Bombs simply because he could lock onto the sponges, which are a huge gimmick in Absorbency and U. But it was quite slow going because you couldn't skip any enemies as they would shrink the sponges immediately. This third level, Soak It To Me, was pretty simple and just required a lot of patience. And now is where shit gets wild. This is splitting crosshairs. You grind on rails and must hit every target for the next rail to appear. This can be difficult at times with a normal weapon, but try it with only burst bombs. Thankfully, the one saving grace is that they have a somewhat big blast radius, so often you can blow up 2 targets at once or at least damage the ones surrounding it. I was able to get through everything up until the final checkpoint. Just look at what I have to do here. We start off with 4 targets at an incredibly awkward angle, then we've got 9 at the very end with the one in the middle being orange, which means it takes way more hits. So not only do I have to be extremely accurate with all my throws, but I have to do everything as fast as humanly possible. I tried this for a good 20 minutes, thinking that it wouldn't be doable. Trying to aim is absurdly hard when the grind rail is constantly changing elevation and direction, so I need to memorize exactly where to aim and at what times. Thank God that we can keep trying at this checkpoint, because without that I might have given up. But I kept going, and started to somehow figure out a strategy. By jumping in the air, I can slightly delay my speed, therefore giving me more time to hit the targets. The only issue was falling from a jump, and if you jump too much or too late, the targets would get ahead of you, ruining the optimization. So what I did was figure out exactly when the targets started to move, and luckily, I was able to hit them a little bit ahead of time. On a good run, I could get 3 burst bombs out before they started moving. I also needed to aim high in the air and try to destroy the top targets first, because the blue spinny heads get in the way when you're trying to hit the orange guy. After about 45 minutes, this happened. Oh my God, that was perfect until the end. The ending is by far the hardest part of the whole section. The angle you have to throw the burst bomb at is incredibly unintuitive, and I have no choice but to jump at least 2 times consecutively. This was my best attempt. it was possible! Oh my god! Oh my god! Certified gamer moment. After that colossal task, it was a relief that the rest of Site 2 was pretty easy. The 5th level was just using the crab tank the whole time. The 6th one, getting lost in 3 easy steps, wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be. You're in this big maze, and you gotta hit a switch at the end to rotate it vertically and climb back up. The enemies weren't nearly as much of a hindrance as I expected, considering I could only use curling bombs. Thanks to their blast radius, I eventually climbed atop the maze and got through it without many issues. As for the 7th level, the ink conservation project, you're not supposed to shoot any ink, which means no sub-weapons. I figured I'd give it a try anyway, and a big wall was blocking my path. But I had an idea. An incredibly stupid idea. It was time to go back to swimming in the ink without popping up, and it was a lot scarier this time because if I did pop up at any moment, they would hit me. But very carefully, I made it to the other side. When I got there, I made the path even longer and then tried squid rolling. Unfortunately, that didn't really pan out and I couldn't get any ink on the wall, so that was kinda it for that level. After that was another interesting one, switching things up. I only had access to splat bombs, and shockingly enough, the lip of this block would catch the bomb, giving them a chance to explode. But no matter how many times I did this, the switch did not get one drop of ink on it. Even letting the bomb fall from the top, it still made no difference. It's like the game purposefully doesn't allow you to use splat bomb ink. But now it was time for the next boss. After DJ Octavio, I was a little concerned to say the least, but thankfully I have my entire arsenal of sub-weapons this time. All I need to do is hit the eels back into fry, then hit her with some bombs. This wasn't too difficult for the first and second phase, because I didn't understand exactly how the boss works. You see these square targets on the eels? Yeah, the yellow ones are decoys while the red ones are real. I can be slow sometimes, I'm not afraid to admit that. But in the final phase, you must hit all the real eels before the next attack pattern begins. Since burst bombs are weak, this was ridiculously hard to do. The only phase where I even stood a chance of pulling this off was with 100 Eel Vision and Great Moray Transformation. That's because the eels were relatively close together, and I could pair a splashdown with fast time burst bombs. Fry, of course, takes more hits in this phase too, so a couple times I got up to her and fell off because I took too long. So I was forced to pre-coat the sides of Octostomp before having another go. It took over 20 minutes, but I did eventually beat this boss with only splashdowns and burst bombs, which means it's time to move on to Site 3. With Site 3, there's only 7 stages, and all the possible ones were pretty easy. Level 1 was just killing more enemies, same with Level 2 but with more flying around. Level 3 had a couple tricky splat bombs to nail, but otherwise it was painless. You're supposed to only use curling bombs in Level 4, and Level 5 doesn't allow sub-weapons of any kind. Level 6, Time Trial and Errors, is another breaking of the targets, and all we can use are burst bombs. I tried this for about 5 minutes before realizing I was getting like 30 of the 60 targets in the time limit. Even if I optimize the level, there is no way I could take out 1 target per second. And finally, level 7 was just riding around on ink rails. So now we can move on to Site 4. And this one has another boss battle. Oh boy. Site 4 was a lot tougher than Site 3 for a multitude of reasons. The first level starts off pretty easy though, and same with the second level as well as the third. The fourth one, Splash the Block Party, is another slow going but doable stage, and then we move to Amusing a Bemused Muse. Now, let me tell you, I am not amused that I have to complete this level with a frickin' ninja. It comes with splash damage, which is the most terrifying thing in all of Splatoon. I spent a good 15 minutes trying to carefully navigate my way through and pick the right boxes to break, only for too many to get inked on and the wrong one was destroyed. The splash damage on this sub is so insanely unfair, even more so than Matchmaker Station, and that level's miserable too. So is it possible? I'd say it's highly unlikely. I can't imagine anyone would even bother to try, but now someone's gonna try because I've challenged it, so have fun to whoever wants to prove me wrong. The 6th level, Those Aren't Birds, starts off with more targets, but this time they're hurled at you from the sky. It took me a few tries, but I eventually got the timing down perfectly. That was until the dreaded orange target showed up, and now I've lost all hope. I managed to hit it 3 times, and I could probably get 4, but it would take at least 5 to 6 to break, which isn't going to be possible. As for level 7, there's no subs to pick from, so we'll skip it. And level 8 is more rail grinding. Things are about to get real again. The targets themselves were a little bit easier than the previous grinding stage, but at the same time, the checkpoints are much more spread out. So either way, this was an endurance that I had to grind to get through. Thankfully, a large majority of the targets would group up together, allowing me to hit multiple at once. There was one set of 3 that were really spread out, and it took quite a few tries as I had to jump at just the right times to hit them all without falling off. But I think you know what happens next. Come on. Come on. Yes! Yes! Holy shit! Oh my god! And now we're getting to the final checkpoint. Thankfully, most of these targets were really easy to hit. It looks difficult, but the blast radius is so generous that the splash damage made things pretty easy. Until the very end, of course. There were these 4 targets on the far left and far right sides that I could not hit for the life of me. I mean, seriously, even if I aimed perfectly, my shot always missed until the path straightened out. But then the issue was a lack of time. There's a bunch of targets at the end and you need to hit them all to open the door. I figured out that with the splash damage, I could definitely make it work, but I could not find the right spot.
Try this side.
What? Yes! Yes! Oh, yeah! Oh, yeah! Yeah! Woo! And honestly, things didn't get much easier after this. Level 9 was fine though, but that was my only breather. Next was level 10, Ink Fast Hotshot. Here we have even more targets. I'm really getting tired of them. This time, we have to hit them while also avoiding fail balloons. So now, I don't want a lot of splash damage, but the burst bombs just burst with excitement every time they pop. I can't control that. I ended up getting pretty far up until this part where the balloons rotate. Since the balloons are so close together, there was nothing I could do to avoid the fail balloons. I did come up with a pretty smart route. I'd hit these 3 at the bottom, these 2 in the middle, fill my ink, and hit the one on the bottom. But unfortunately, it's impossible to pop the last one without also hitting other fail balloons. No matter how many times I nailed the movement, they always popped at the end. And I think what's happening is the fail balloons are getting weakened like the normal ones do, but you just can't see it visually. So I had to give up right at the end, which sucks. And to wrap up Site 4, level 11 was simple, and level 12 is another one without any sub-weapons. But hey, at least we've got the Shiver Shark boss fight. And I'm not even joking when I say this, but it's way more fun only using subs. I don't know why either. Maybe because it's too easy with the hero shot, but with only burst bombs, you have to plan out your shots in advance while also avoiding the attacks and having enough of your ink on the ground. This combination of events makes Shiver Shark really fun to play. And I also discovered that you can throw a splat bomb in the shark's mouth to do tons of damage. I never even realized that till now. Moving on to Site 5, most of the levels were pretty easy. These include Level 1, trouble round every corner, Level 2, the upside to enemy backsides, Level 3, uh-oh, too many snipers, Level 4, barriers, they've got you covered, and next is Level 5. I consider this one the Pac-Man stage, and instead of using a burst bomb like I normally would when the situation allows it, I actually went with curling bombs this time. That's because curling bombs can collect power eggs, so I used their distance to my advantage and was able to get eggs really quickly this way. After a few tries and finding a good route, I managed to get them all. This is another challenge where I'd recommend you try it out at home because it was really fun. Level 6, zipping over the neighborhood was a breeze, and next is Level 7, another grinding rail stage. Unfortunately, there's no crazy ass movement this time because we only have access to splat bombs. Why would they randomly change it? And these things don't blow up right away and are extremely finicky, so there's no way I can complete this one. Level 8's making waves with splashdowns was a piece of cake, and so was Level 9's low vis high risk, and even Level 10's shooter on rails. I have access to the burst bombs again, so you'd think this would be another challenging one, but it really wasn't. When I got to the final checkpoint, it took me like 3 minutes to figure out what to do. The burst bombs weren't quite reaching the switches I needed to hit, so all I had to do was jump and slightly flick the stick forward. You can't really lose anyway since the rail just loops over and over. This would have been an entirely different story if I was forced to complete this in one go. The final levels include 11's Simply Zip-tastic, 13's Learn to Reflect, and this one is in the bank, and 12's You'll Go Far If You Shoot Far couldn't be done, but I did do something kind of interesting. If you very precisely aim this splat bomb, you can actually hit the switch and move forward, but unfortunately there's 3 enemies up ahead on the ceiling. I tried to jam a bomb up between the middle one, but it didn't really work. And now we're on to the last site, Site 6. After playing through this one, there really wasn't much to write home about. A lot of the stages just forced me to play slowly, but it wasn't really hard. Like with level 1, I just needed to be really stealthy against the Octarians and I was fine. And the same goes for level 2 as well as level 3. All I can say about level 4 Conserve Ink Splat Sustainability was that it was hilarious. You're supposed to use very little ink, so I figured I'd just go as far as I could. And by some miracle, I made it to the very top. And I had no way of hitting the ink balloon, meaning I couldn't complete the stage despite completing it. Level 5 and level 6 were easy enough, but level 7 was a little scary. The name is Keep It Rolling, and we aren't allowed to roll with anything but burst bombs. While you can complete this one, you have to plan out jumps very accordingly, or you'll end up falling to your demise. Level 8, level 9, level 10, level 11, and level 12 were a cakewalk, which just leaves us with the big man boss. This is probably my favorite Splatoon boss ever. The Mario Sunshine reference is so cool because it works perfectly for Big Man, but also because Splatoon was originally going to be a Mario spin-off. So in a weird way, the worlds have collided together after all this time. Fighting Big Man with only subs was a bit tricky, especially in the final phase. I was using a combination of burst and splat bombs. Splat bombs obviously do more damage, while burst bombs made it much easier to escape tight spaces. When all the clones are coming after you, it was a pain in the butt to stay alive as they would constantly spam attacks. But eventually, I got a groove down and took out the Big Man, which now leads us to what I imagine you've all been waiting for, the very end of the game. There's 4 sections before fighting the big old teddy bear. The first one, you already don't have your hero weapons, so that one was easy, and frankly, the rest of it was too. I was expecting to struggle a lot more, but I've gotten so used to using burst bombs that it's not that challenging anymore. And at the same time, we're given so many specials, so I kind of forgot the hero weapons even existed. But what about Mr. Grizz? Is he any harder? Well, I'd say yes and no. The first phase really had me confused because I kept hitting a spot, thinking I was doing something wrong. I mean, nothing was happening, despite hitting him what felt like a billion times. And let's keep in mind, I can only use small fry and burst bombs as an attack, so after almost 10 minutes, the first fuzzball showed up and I could move on. The second part was a lot tougher because there were so many things I had to worry about. All the enemies shooting ink, the entire ship rotating, and Grizz is throwing ink around at any point in time. After another 10 or so minutes, I moved on to the final part, and there were way too many times that I almost splatted to my death. It was almost impossible to get the shields off the enemies because I had no way of sneaking around them, and Grizz started using this massive ink wave thing that's super deadly, and my burst bombs still suck, so I'm honestly shocked I got through this at all. Once I killed all the enemies, it wasn't that bad. It was just a waiting game. After blowing up his fuzzballs, the ship explodes, and it's time for us to do some vacuuming with the DJ himself. However, there's enemies that are going to pop up and waste my time, because for the first time in this campaign where it matters, I'm actually on a time limit. This was surprisingly not as bad as I expected. The only enemies that really sucked were the octostamps because you can only hit them when they're laying down. So it took some practice, but I eventually got really good at hitting them precisely and quickly, and for the last set of enemies, I used a splashdown to save a ton of time. On just my 3rd attempt, I got to the big laser part and finished off Mr. Grizz. I don't know if the laser counts as a hero weapon, because if it does, then I guess you can't beat the final boss, but I wouldn't count it personally, so that leaves us with one more thing to do. After Alterna, the Champions Road of Splatoon. Lord have mercy on my soul, this is gonna be so, fun and exciting, yeah! And I'm not even thinking about the first section. I was able to get through it on my first try, actually. I had to spend forever painting all these bricks, but otherwise we moved on to the part I was very concerned about. And I think you can guess what it is, another grind rail section. There is not one easy moment in this entire section. And that's with normal weapons. Doing this with only burst bombs wasn't enough. In fact, I started to use small fry as well. This is gonna sound insane, but he was actually making a slight difference. On each rail, I have to hit 3 targets, and the angles the balloons are laid out makes it almost impossible to chain hit the targets, meaning I have to hit them one at a time. I learned that I can get about 6 balloons destroyed before I'm totally out of ink, and there's 12 that I have to get through. And let's keep in mind, this is the very beginning. I haven't even gotten to the meat of the level yet. But anyway, I brought up Small Fry earlier because he can destroy targets. So what I did was have him destroy the very first 2 targets before even getting on the rail. You might think that's just a little overkill and absurd, but I actually have to do this to save as much ink as humanly possible, so it is completely necessary. After doing that, I'll hit the 3rd balloon with Small fry and do 2 jumps. At this point, I have full ink with this strategy, so I can hit the next 6 balloons no problem. All these jumps have to be manual and high in the air, by the way, again to conserve ink, which is different from a normal jump, which kind of just clings you to the next rail. And after that, the ending is where things get insanely hard. I have to throw small fry at the first balloon, then by some miracle pop the last 2. And at this point, I have almost no ink, so I have no idea how to consistently get through this. After sitting on this level for a couple days, I went back and realized I actually could hit multiple balloons at once. This was extremely hard, but if you timed it just right, you're able to conserve a lot more ink and move forward. The section after that wasn't very difficult, it mostly just came down to saving as much ink as possible. But then came the first big swirl, as I call it. This swirl has 9 balloons in a row, and you might be wondering if it's possible to chain enough balloons together to get through this. How many more balls? Oh my god! What the hell? There's more after that? There's more after that. Again, this whole section has to be done with no checkpoints. I went back and watched the entire level over and completely forgot this painful reality. And that's not even the hard part. I mean, just look at what's going on the screen. The balloons keep coming. And then there's this ending with like 12 and I can't refill ink since I'm falling from the sky. There is just no way I can get through after Alterna. So out of 73 levels, only 56 were possible. That's about 76%. Which is way lower than I was expecting. I really thought I was going to get through the entire game, but until further exploits are discovered, since this is still a new game, that is the current count. But with that, thank you all for watching, and I'll speak with you soon. Until next time.